Hello and welcome to Leaders with Heart. I'm your host, Patty McDonald, and today we're speaking with Frankie Pynakker. Now, Frankie is an incredibly interesting human being with many different dimensions to his life story and his personality. And what is really fascinating about this conversation to me is his personal evolution through the different levels of leadership. When he was 21, he founded a company called Design Group Australia, and he steered that company to become the largest seller of greeting cards around Australia. It's also gone global, and through this process, he's gone on a journey of going from founder to CEO and now to chairman. And really interesting to hear the different leadership styles required at each level along this path. He's also had his own spiritual awakening during this period, and it's this newfound perspective on life that's led him to create a brand new offering, which is an app called Breathwork Meditations. And having experienced this app, it's a really profound way to connect to that inner peace inside of us in a very accessible, practical way. And so Frankie's fusion of this spirituality and his leadership expertise is something that's so valuable to hear. And I'm really grateful and honored to have had this conversation with Frankie. And I know you're going to get a lot out of it as well. So enjoy. And if you have any questions, always reach out. Much love. Welcome to the podcast. Today we're here with Frankie Pynakker and also co-starring, we've got Shanti here and Bo.
Bo might come up, but he's on the ground.
Keeping us nice and chill today. So Thanks for having me in your home, brother. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here also.
Yeah, excited to jump into this conversation because in knowing you and in getting to experience who you are as a person, I've been really inspired by how much you've traversed so many different worlds in your life with so much variety and magic and different experiences that a lot of people don't often join the dots between. And we'll go into some of that today, but our community, for example, that we met in, being here in Melbourne, often might know you as someone who practices breathwork and who teaches breathwork and recently released an amazing app called Breathwork Meditations. And it's something that is really powerful that has been shared with our community and beyond. But I've also been really excited by hearing about your journey prior to coming into that space as well in the corporate world. Founding a company at 21, Design Group Australia, which then went global and had a lot of corporate success, and you're now still the chairman in that role. And so you've got a lot of wisdom to share from different parts of life.
It's hard in these podcasts to know where to start, and I guess starting for me, coming to doing breathwork meditations is like coming back to the young version of me. So as a young child, I loved being in nature. I loved my pets. You know, I had a pet duck for many years. And
Love that.
I can still speak fluent duck. Any duck comes up to me, I can sit there and just have a good chat with them.
Bo seems interested in that.
Bo seemed a bit interested in speaking duck. But then I hit school, and school was just not good for me, and it wasn't designed for people like myself. Because I'm dyslexic, also have, when I was younger, still do have attention difficulties. I'm always moving on to like, oh, what now? What do I need to do? But still, at the same time, I was blessed with a mathematical brain. So not quite Rain Man, but it was the only subject in school I was always good at. And singing. Singing I was good at as well. But and one of my highlights of school life when I was in primary school, I sang on the school litter record, and this was in the 70s, and I sung Morning Is Broken. I lost my copy of that record, And from time to time, I go searching to see if I can find this record of that young me singing "Morning Is Broken."
Beautiful.
But yeah, school ended up being a journey where, at the end of year 10, while I was the top of the year in maths, every other subject I failed. Home ec, I was good at cooking as well. Got to be good at a couple of things.
Yeah.
And so my report card in year 10, and this is going back a while, so I'm just turned 60, so going back quite a few years, so this is in the 70s. My report card said, we don't believe that Frank should be going on with his education at school and he should leave and get a trade.
Wow.
I didn't end up getting a trade, although I was thinking about it, and I ended up in a very obscure sort of business. So during my year 10 in school, I did work experience. I don't even know if they still do that at school now, but that thing where you find a job and you just go there for 2 weeks as part of the curriculum. And I went to a company that was making printing inks, and I was doing colour matching in their lab. So they were making inks for like printing bread bags and things like that. So, and apparently I was good at colour matching. So at the end of that year, I'd failed school, I was leaving school. I actually had the desire, I was thinking I wanted to be a landscape gardener because I felt creative, and I still love gardening, as you can tell by my balcony. But this job just, like these, I'd been there for work experience and they offered me a job. And so being also path of least resistance, I just said, okay. And so I started working there, and I started working in their laboratory at 16. Was there for 5 years till I was 21. And at 21, I started my first business in opposition to them. Because I've been most people haven't been working for 5 years at 21.
Yeah.
So.
And if you can recall back to that time, do you remember that initial spark that kind of gave you that desire to start your own thing?
Yeah, so my business mentor was my grandmother.
Yeah, wow.
My mother's mother. And she had shops in Sydney that were gift shops.
Yep.
And from the age of 13, maybe even younger, maybe 12, every Christmas I was sent up to Sydney to help my grandmother in her shop for the Christmas peak. So I would work in her shop, and what I loved at the end of the day, because it was all cash in those days, my grandmother and I would sit there and count all the money from the takings of the day. And so she was sort of my business, like she always talked about business and having business, and like she couldn't live any other way.
Sure.
Like when she was in the Netherlands, she had a cheese shop. When she came to Australia, every cent that she had was just to set up her first shop.
Yeah. So question on that, because seeing like how much success you've had, one just theory that came up for me then that I'd love to hear your thoughts on is that in sharing those experiences with your grandmother, you had these experiences of money and business being connected to love and family, and
and also
ring true at all?
I think as humans we react to anything that's a good vibration within our body. So if we're doing something and the vibration is good, then we want to do more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And I think in my life at that time there was not a lot of the good vibrations.
Sure.
So therefore, especially in school, like it was just like it was tumultuous. Which then led to at lunchtimes and stuff, just like at 15 smoking weed down the back of the school because it was pointless. And it, and I do believe things can snowball.
Yep.
So positive vibrations snowball and get bigger, but also negative things can snowball. And it's like a lot of the time people don't know how they got from A to B, whether good or bad, or seen by society as good or bad. But it's because of a spark that sent us in a direction or another direction. So I think for me starting my first business wasn't even that scary.
Yeah.
Like I'd saved up money, I was 21 and I was trying to make a decision between do I start up my own business at 21 or do I go to Europe and travel for a couple of years?
Yep.
And it was a hard decision, but I knew work and that felt safe for me.
Yeah.
And then I also thought, look, if I make money, I can travel anytime and anywhere.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Maybe it's going to happen later in life. And remembering also this was the 70s, so life was different to now.
Sure.
And so I just put all my savings into starting this first business and buying all the ingredients to make printing ink. Like,
wow.
Who even knows the formula to make printing ink, right?
You can't Google it back then either, can you?
No, I don't even think you can Google it now. But having worked in there, I knew I knew what to do and how to do it. So I started that business. I'd run that business for 6 years, and then one of my customers, which was a couple of Greek boys in Melbourne, they were printing gift wrapping paper and selling it at the markets. And they had this sort of little illegal business going on where everything was in cash. And then they got investigated by the tax department and then they're like, oh, do you know anyone that wants to buy a printing business? And I'm like, oh, well, it's a bit of horizontal integration. So I bought that business from them and actually got a couple of partners into that. One of which was my father and one was my best friend.
Yep.
Hint for anyone listening to this podcast. Don't do that.
Yep. I was wondering what direction I was going to go.
I actually had a chat with Kieran, he's still a really good friend, but he now works in the film industry. He's a bit of a guru in that area, working behind the scenes. He's like the man that can get anything for anyone, anytime. And my father, he had a lot of trauma himself, and I think the fact that he felt that when I was a child he could yell and scream at me, even though I was now his boss, it was a touchy...
It's a big thing.
Yeah, and so I was the major shareholder, he was a minor shareholder, and so I had the final say.
Yep.
But...
Sure.
There would be conflict, let's say. There was no beatings anymore, which was good. And it made me, like at one point, I'm like, why did I do this? And it's sort of like, he's still my father and he still loved me. And he was unemployed at the time and it made sense because he was a printer by trade. I had printing machines. So... he was an invaluable part of that business as well because he ran the whole printing side and left me just to work on product development. And so from that seed has now grown into Design Group.
Yep.
So we still do a lot of gift wrap. We're the largest by... sales of greeting cards, the largest greeting card company in Australia. We sell more cards than Hallmark and John Sands together.
Yep.
Our turnover is more than double their turnovers together. But we're in a lot of the smaller shops.
Yep.
We're mainly supplying discount variety shops in that, which is where Grandma and Grandpa, who actually buy greeting cards, are shopping. And from there, we've moved into a lot of other products. So we have ranges of candles. We've actually just bought an essential oil company, and we're the second largest party distributor, manufacturer in Australia.
Yeah.
So, when people's children are having their little Spider-Man party or princess party, they're getting their gear from us.
Yeah, beautiful. Does that have a sense of fulfillment to know that that's actually...
Yeah, it does now, but, for many years, up until, 6 years ago, I was chained to that business and being totally disconnected from the younger version of myself. They're loving you. They can feel the dingo energy.
For anyone listening to this, I've got two beautiful dogs sitting on me right now. I'm just trying to keep them away from the microphone, but otherwise they're very happy to stay here.
Yeah. So I got very disconnected from the younger versions of myself through addiction of, alcohol and drugs, and, when I was travelling around the world, going out to the most exclusive places, partying, and and that eventually led to a divorce. And I got to this point where it was how do I get back to me, to that young kid that could just sit there and talk to a duck for an hour?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's been my path over the last 7 or 8 years. It's just been that path back to Frankie.
Can I ask a question on that? On that journey of it sounds like an intensifying of external chasing of things and actually achieving them as well.
Yeah.
And then, a path of now settling back into that inner child and the peace of, everyday moment. Is there anything now that you would say to that younger version of yourself that was on that path of more intensifying? Do you feel like it was necessary?
The younger part of me is really happy right now.
Yeah.
Because he's thank God you've come back.
Sure. How about that middle part of you?
That middle part of me, there's been, over the last 6-7 years, there's been a lot of negotiation.
Yeah.
And a lot of coming to being at ease with everything.
Yeah.
And understanding that, having 2 or 3 vodkas every night wasn't healthy.
Sure. Yeah.
Just to take the edge off.
Yeah.
So there's no conflict there. And that Frank, so people at Design Group, they call me Frank still.
Yeah.
And people that I've known for quite a few years. It's there's Frank and there's Frankie. And so, but I'm Frankie. It's just really what other people are referring to me as.
Sure.
But there was a time where I was trying to be the two different, but realised you can't be two different things, So, so I got to the point, and now it's at the point where, a lot of slowly more people in the business world are calling me Frankie. So it's an interesting, because as they've seen a change in me, they also are then oh, okay.
Yeah. I love that.
Because it was a slow process. And it started off I was going through my second divorce. I hit rock bottom, and at first almost went the other way. Like it was like, fuck it. But then I'm like, then Frankie just said, hey, just now's the time where you can just be yourself and just, and so the biggest thing for me was probably a year and a half into starting the journey was I was still working at Design Group, but I'd reduced my days. And I was still the CEO. I was hanging on to that ego of I'm the CEO. And I sat there one morning and wrote out a resignation to myself.
Yeah. Wow.
And gave myself the reasons why I'm resigning. And, so that's what I did.
And you followed through?
Yeah, then I resigned, sent that resignation because half the business is owned by a UK-listed company. So sent my resignation to my partners as well. And they're like, oh, no, you should just stay running the business,
Yeah.
Well, you have somebody else do a lot of it, but you run it. And I'm like, no, I'm done. And so I'm still chairman. And so I have a wonderful story of a person running the business. And I think you've met Shane.
Yeah. Amazing, man.
So Shane started working for me when he was 15.
Yeah.
And he worked in the warehouse and become warehouse manager over years. Then he went into sales, become the sales manager, and he's just moved through the business, then decided to join the police force in Queensland for some reason. And then a few years later rang me up and said, will you take me back? And now he's the CEO.
Yeah.
So, great story.
It's incredible. I'd love to hear a bit from you about, from the perspective of leadership, how your leadership journey has shifted as you've kind of evolved over the years, right? Because you've obviously had, you've had that creative phase of being the founder and really building it from scratch. You've had the CEO phase and obviously many in between.
Yep.
CEO phase where you're managing a whole organization on the ground. Yeah. And then now the chairman phase where it sounds a little bit more, like pulling the puppet strings potentially, or I'd love to hear your way.
It's a lot more, I would say, mentoring.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more mentoring Shane as my CEO and Mike as my CFO. Although, on a little side note, my son, who's been on his own business journey and has been working for Brookfields in London, managing assets for them of like close to $1 billion, is actually going to take a step back from his career to become the CFO at Design Group. So he starts next year to come into the business, which is, something I've always wanted.
I'm sure.
And he was always going to come in on the numbers side.
Yeah.
So what was your question?
How your perspectives on leadership have shifted as you've kind of evolved through those.
So I think it's a lot easier when you're. I was going to say a lot easier when you're leading one person.
Yeah.
But you're not leading that person. You're listening to that person. You're listening to what are the issues, and trying to work through those issues. And coming from, obviously having experience in a lot of the same issues is working through those things. And I feel it is more just a listening to what the problem is, having the experience. I think any mentor, is a specialist in their own field or whatever, and so they can help with insight and give insight into different things because they've experienced similar things before or that sort of thing. So, but it's for me the challenge is not getting into too much detail.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if I'm bored, not that I often get bored, it's pulling apart the balance sheet and trying to tell people what to do rather than letting them come to me with the thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
What one distinction that's coming up for me hearing that from a coaching perspective, which might be slightly different, is this concept of coaching the person versus coaching the situation.
Yeah.
Like really like supporting them to grow through it rather than trying to solve a problem.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, definitely. And just sometimes it is, well, what are the other options? Okay, this is a problem. We know it's a problem. What are the options available?
Yeah.
Discerning which is the riskiest option, which is the least riskiest option.
Yeah.
But then what's the best option versus, because sometimes they can be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or sometimes the best option is going to mean more work.
Yes.
Or more change within a business. And I think that's the one thing and why Design Group, like we have been successful while a lot of our competitors have dropped off. And we've bought a lot of our competitors along the way is because of that discernment and knowing, because we'll have competitors that feel threatened by us and so they're dropping their prices to retain business. At the end of the day, their bottom line disappears. And then we get to pick them up at a cheap price, which isn't ideal for them. But sometimes you've got to know that your product's good enough and your price is good enough.
Sure.
And you don't have to be the cheapest.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like business ever mirrors your own personal journey? Or do you feel like this is obviously a rabbit hole and just love to hear?
Businesses are like humans. Any business, if it's nurtured and it's given the space to grow and given what it's needed, the fertilizer or whatever to grow is no different to a tree, is no different to us.
Yeah.
It's all part of, every business is an ecosystem. We are an ecosystem. So,
love that.
Yeah.
I love that metaphor. I think you know that would land for me.
Right.
Because obviously I do a lot of work and speak a lot about the dingoes and their role in the ecosystem as the leaders of the ecosystem. And so I'd love to hear more of your perspective on like how you see business as an ecosystem and the role of leadership in that.
Yeah. I think the ecosystem in a lot of businesses is not necessarily what they're selling, or it's the culture within the business. And a lot of businesses are finding culture difficult at the moment because of more and more, people working from home 2 or 3 days a week. So I know within our business it's becoming a cultural problem.
Yep.
And I know of other business leaders that I talk to that for them it's becoming a cultural problem as well because of the less face-to-face connection with other people in the business. So I think, and within Design Group and within other businesses, you've got to nurture the little branches that are growing, whether it's a new product line or a new, whatever business it is, like even if you're a tradie, people are ringing you up for quotes.
Yeah.
If you want to grow your business, you've got to do the quotes.
Yep.
You can't just go, I'm too busy to quote at the moment.
Yep.
Because then 6 months down the track, you're going to be looking for work and there was jobs you could have quoted on. So I think that's part of the whole system within any business. Yeah.
Sure. I'm really hearing that ability to zoom out and see all the pieces working together and make sure that that one part over here isn't affecting another part over here adversely.
Yeah, and I've spoken to other business leaders and I do some mentoring for a couple of people in the UK on a regular basis. And part of what tends to come up is that, they cut back on the sales department for a while because, of whatever reason, because they needed to trim back. But then they didn't have as many sales come through, or one of the salespeople that they let go of course, the only business they know is their competitors.
Makes
so
sense.
losing people to competitors, if you're not nurturing your ecosystem, you can lose your best people to the guy that's your competitor.
Yeah.
And so, it's having that family, and that's the biggest thing that we've noticed with a lot more people working from home. And I'm all for working from home, to a certain degree, but especially when you need to concentrate and you need to get stuff done. But a lot of that where, there was, especially in Melbourne, there was the great resignation.
Sure.
So everybody was just resigning. And I think that was because it was at the start of all that. People were getting offered these jobs where they could work from home, and they're like, oh, great, I don't know. Working from home, I do think it's great. But, we have people that in our office, they're like, oh, my desk isn't big enough. Mm-hmm. And then they're working from home and they're working on the kitchen bench.
Yeah.
So it's my desk at work isn't big enough because I don't have enough space for everything.
Sure.
But I can work on a kitchen bench. It's sort of
different
analogies.
Totally. But I really hear that perspective of looking after the whole ecosystem, no matter where they are and how it's plugging in. It's still connected.
Yeah.
Another thing I've really witnessed in you is your ability to contribute to community and to support the building of the foundations of what community can rally around. And we met at a place called Centre of You, which is obviously a big part of both of our lives. I met my wife there and proposed to her there. And you were actually one of the co-founders of the place as well. And and I'll just share briefly the context of this, which is that it's a beautiful story of Frankie supporting another friend to realize her vision of starting this community centre and playing a role as a mentor and financial support. And then, to a point where then she was able to fly and then handed it over in a very generous way. And it was very inspiring to watch that as well.
Yeah. Everyone says it was generous. It was generous and selfish.
Great. So it was win-win.
I think
win-win is another way to say it, right? What happened was that the previous owner of that space, or the person that was running that space, was a place called Breathing Space for 20-odd years. A beautiful woman by the name of Deepa, and I'd been talking to her about running breathwork there, and then during COVID, she decided that she was just going to close down. She was getting. I don't know how old she was, but she'd been there for a long time, and she was driving over from Northside. And she said to me, she rang me up and said, "I've been told that you're going to take it over." And I'm like, "Really, Deepa?" But I met with her down there and talked to her about it, and I looked at the numbers, and because of other businesses and because of a lot of other work I was doing at the time, I was like, I want to do this, but it's not something that I really desire. So, and then it just happened that Grace and I, because we'd met doing shamanic breathwork on a training that I was assisting on, and then I said to Grace, this space come up, because she was talking about running a place, and it was just, I said, well, I've got the space. I haven't physically got it, but the lease is in front of me. Yeah.
But I don't want it long term.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said to her, I'll be financially responsible for it till you feel that you're ready to take it, and at that point I'll give it to you. And so she had to take a leap of faith as well.
Totally.
And because, she just did.
Absolutely.
And so it was like a year and a bit into it, and it was like, we had our handover ceremony. So, and she was still like, but, like some people are like, oh, wow, that's an amazing thing. It didn't really cost me anything either. So, whoa, puppies. Hi, Jazz. Okay. Yeah, we're
a little
just doing a podcast. See you, Jazz.
See you later. Yeah.
So that was just Jasmine, my daughter, just popping in to pick up the dogs.
Guest star.
So we're missing puppies now. So with Centre of You.
Yeah.
I love being an enabling force to help people do things, whether it's doing that or whether it's, I have specific charities that I will, I love Fred Hollow's foundation just because they're giving people eyesight. It's just such a passionate thing for me, because if somebody has their eyesight, they're not disabled anymore. And it's just one way of helping people do that.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I love that. I think and I agree with Fred Hollows. For me, that's one of those ones where it's like, what is it, like $25 or something like that? You can give someone eyesight.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I could have lunch at a takeaway food store, or someone could see for the rest of their life.
Yes, I know. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer at all.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But I love that story with Centre of You and you and Grace, because you're right, it was such a win-win.
Yeah.
And it was such a, by the both of you taking that leap of faith and choosing to collaborate, which is always an investment of not just money, but energy and time. So much magic has come from it, including, me getting married and everything like that.
Absolutely, which is amazing. The woman of your dreams.
Yeah, 100%.
And definitely, before that, I was running breathwork sessions in yoga studios.
Yeah.
And when a yoga studio has 2 rooms, and one has people doing yoga in it, and the other room has people doing breathwork and cathartically releasing and making a lot of noise, it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
And at one point, there was a yin class going on next to my shamanic breathwork class.
Yeah.
And I had the yin teacher come in going, "Could you keep the noise down?" I'm like, "I can't keep the noise down." And it was not my problem.
Yeah.
The scheduling was like that. And anyway, the next week, all the people that were in the yin class came into the breathwork. So I had twice as many people in the breathwork, and she only had 2 people in the yin class.
Wow.
And then she's like, "Okay, I'm not going to run my yin on this night anymore."
Yeah.
So that was quite a funny thing. But the yoga studio then said, "Look, it's, we're a yoga studio.
Sure, yeah.
And even though this is, great for people, and it is part of, if you look through the limbs of yoga, there's a lot of breathwork practices in there." So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I'd love to hear a bit more about breathwork, because for anyone listening to this, they could be in the full range of being deeply involved in breathwork themselves to never having heard of it.
Yeah.
And, we'll meet somewhere in the middle, but, some people might have heard of Wim Hof breathwork, for example. You practice a style called shamanic breathwork. Would you like to speak a little bit about just what breathwork is to you, what it can do for people?
So what's breathwork to me? So breathwork opened up the gate for me to really release childhood trauma and to release a lot of the stories of childhood trauma and look at things in a different way. And so I went very much down the track of breathwork. Originally, I did And it was sort of not even breath work. This was like I was really early on my journey, and there was a girl at the yoga studio who was just doing a bit of she was doing a little bit of sort of, it was like tantra breath work, just for releasing emotions. And so I did this thing with her, and that really opened up doors and gates for me. And then went to Bali, and then ended up doing a shamanic breathwork training, my first one. I've then done second level shamanic breathwork. I've then also assisted on trainings with shamanic breathwork. I've studied with Wim Hof as well, jumping in the cold water, online that was. And I've also done biodynamic breathwork trainings, yeah. And so breathwork is an amazing tool for cathartic release. And for me it worked because I was doing a lot of the aftercare and the follow-up myself. And when I was doing it, I was in a nurturing community of Bali. I think I touched something still on.
I think it's okay.
That's right.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's all good.
It's all
Sorry.
good. All good.
Just heard a beep. So because I was in Bali, there was a lot of support there for that. And what I noticed is that outside of that, quite often there's the breath work, people release something. And what I was noticing, a lot of people coming back to classes, it's like, oh, what do you want to release today? And it's the same thing they released 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so if there isn't that support after a breathwork session, or the integration after a breathwork session, it just becomes like a yo-yo session. So, I've let go of it, and then you walk out the door and it comes back.
Yep.
And a lot of people treat trauma that way.
Yep.
You know, whether it's going to their therapist or going to, and for me, being somebody that, is dyslexic with words and good with numbers, like it's always baffles me a little bit. But anyway, it was that sort of thing where I could really jump and change for myself. But I could see that other people weren't making the changes, a lot of my clients. And so that's why I then started studying biodynamic breathwork as well, because biodynamic breathwork's a lot more one-on-one and working with tension in the body, working with more body work and things like that. And so over time, what I was doing was evolving.
Yeah.
And you would have noticed it during when we were doing red pill rituals together, like doing guided meditation into the breath, and people like starting. And so that was the start of what is now Breathwork Meditations.
Yeah.
Because it was like bringing people into that road, opening them up to, with spoken word as well as breathing.
What I'm hearing in that as well is that merging of the intensity and the cathartic release with the settling and the more yin style integration.
Yeah, and then and at the end as well, bringing the breath down and now slower, deeper breaths, and then, mandala drawings and sharing, and, I'm an inner guidance coach as well, so quite often doing inner guidance letter to ourselves afterwards. And so breathwork meditations evolved from that. And it's just so interesting, like seeing what is being created.
Yeah.
And the fact that, I think I shared with you earlier when we were chatting before, all I did was put 2 or 3 meditations online, and then to get a phone call from, hi, I'm Sunny Dulay from from New York. We want to do a meditation app with you.
Great accent.
not a very good English accent. But, yeah, and at first I'm like, who's this joker? What's going on? And, and then he shared with me that, a few of the few that I did put up online, all his friends were listening to in New York and LA, and they're like, we need. It wasn't like we would like to. He's like, no, we need to do it up with you. And I'm like, then I've got to do a lot more. Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah.
And so that empowered me. And the one thing I love in life is a challenge. And in September I turned 60, and my mother had Alzheimer's, my grandmother had Alzheimer's, my grandfather on both sides, my father, he was a lot, and so one of the things that scares me the most in this life is not using my brain enough and not learning new things. So that's something that really drives me, is whether it's learning a new morning practice. Like at the moment I'm learning a 35-minute Qigong practice. And so I'll be doing that for probably for a month.
Yeah.
I've got this one little thing on my iPad which is like a maze, join the dots. I think today I was looking at it, I was up to day 778 of doing that consecutively.
That's discipline.
So it's like how do we show up for ourselves?
Yeah.
How do we show up in little ways that we can be consistent at one thing? Because once we can be consistent at one thing, and once we can learn something, and what happens is that we then just get better and better at it. But most of the time we don't give it the consistency. I went to have guitar lessons when I was like 12. I think my mum took me to one lesson. I loved it, but I didn't practice in between.
Yeah.
Went to the second lesson and loved it, but didn't practice in between.
Yeah.
Eventually my mum said, you're not practicing, so I'm not going to take you to guitar lessons anymore. And she was right, because there was no point in me turning up and doing half an hour and, having fun. But, and by not doing that, I missed out on being a rock star.
In your own way.
Yeah, well, being like, and now there's nothing I love more than when somebody pulls out their guitar and they're just playing their guitar. Yeah. And it's just so beautiful for them.
Totally.
And I think I could have had that.
Totally.
But I didn't do it consistently.
I hear that, but I also hear it sounds like there's certain things for you that just, there was no way they were passing you by, right? Like this Breathwork app, for example, like it's just come about, and it's like you didn't really do anything that that really meant you were chasing it. It just kind of it chased you.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I've realised, and that's why I am a big believer in manifesting, because I think I was manifesting before I knew what the word was. When you set intention to start, when you're moving towards something and then it happens, like some people will go, oh, you were lucky. But if you're moving towards something, it just makes sense that it's moving towards you as well. And I really believe, like, whether it was when I was in business with Design Group, even though I wasn't consciously like going, oh, I'm manifesting my business to grow every year. Yeah. I was doing the work and setting the intentions for the business to grow and nurturing it. It's sort of like you don't get a new pot plant and put it in your house. If you don't water it, it's going to die. Yeah. If you water it, and it's going to stay alive. If you water it and give it some vitamins and nurture it, maybe cut off the little dead bits that are there, it's going to flourish. Yeah. And that's what manifestation is. It's like you've got to have the desire, you've got to have the will, but you still have to go towards it. You still have to work towards
Sure,
it.
yeah.
It's not just going to miraculously, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. Like for some reason, like the land that we're on now is an old petrol station.
Yep.
And I was driving past and it had a big for sale sign on the front of it. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like I love the weird shape. It's a triangle-shaped block. I love the weirdness of the shape. And wouldn't it be amazing to have an apartment on the top that has, like, you know, unobscured views in Melbourne around the whole of the area? And then I went to the auction and then I bought it even before I understood that because it was a petrol station, I had to clean up the land and do all this other work.
Sure.
But, you know, even through the highs and lows of that, like I learnt a lot.
Yes.
You know, I learnt about building. I learnt about, you know, once again, this is its own business.
Yeah.
You know, I've got 17 tenants downstairs that all know who I am. There's like, oh, I've got a plumbing issue. Oh, I've got that.
Yeah.
Here's the agent's number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to just, like, as we start to bring this conversation to a close, hear a little bit about, like, how you navigate that positionality of having so many people that, like, in some way are connected to you and in some way, like, have some reliance on you, or, like, there's some form of, like, you know, like, you could solve a problem for them, right? And so, like, how do you navigate that? Because obviously a big potential of energy that you could spend, and you seem very clear on your actual direction.
Yeah, I do spend a lot of time inward. I do,
Yeah.
Like whether it's morning meditation practice or just morning movement practice. You know, sometimes I don't leave here for days.
Yeah.
You know, like whether I'm working in the office or just, I love just playing in the garden there. Like I can just get caught up. Like that's young Frankie.
Yeah.
He just loves that.
Yeah.
So, and there's like, I just move. It's sort of like I move through the day, and it's like, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. I love cooking as well, so you know, so it's one of those things that I think I struggle sometimes with the whole. You know, we're human beings, but in actual fact, most of the time we're human doings. Not as in the poop, but as in we're always doing something.
Yeah.
And so I try to get that balance of the non-doing. Yeah? And even sometimes the non-doing can be doing.
Sure.
But it's doing something that's more nurturing and more for ourselves.
Yes.
And so, you know, whether it is playing with Shanti, you know, and just having fun with her, or just sitting in the quietness, you know, it's something as a human. Like there's something so weird and particular about us as humans. Like, and I don't get it, but I'm trying to get it, and I think, and every time I think, oh yeah, I've let go of something, and I'm like, you know, Shane's got more authority at Design Group, and so he's got more control there, and so I don't have to be involved as much anymore. And with my son going into that business, you know, and then I buy some land in Noosa Lemboggan, and you know, I've got plans on the bench there for building some villas in Noosa Lemboggan. Like, it just happens.
Yeah.
Because the whole reason I bought the land in Noosa Lemboggan, because I was in Bali with Amara in a guidance. And then after that, I was like thinking, oh, what do I want to do? And while I was in Ubud, because for a while I've got lots of friends that live in Ubud, and there's, you know, a big, you know, conscious community in Ubud. And then I was there and I'm like, I don't actually want to live here. And a friend of mine, like at the moment I said, I don't want to live here, I got a text message from a friend of mine who's just built a villa in Nusa Lembongan. And she said, in her text, she said, oh, Donna said you're in Bali. My villa isn't booked for the next 3 nights. If you want to use it,
Wow.
Go and stay, you know, for free. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I got there, and then she texted me and said, oh, the land across the road's for sale. It'd be great to have you as a neighbour. And so
Can't make this stuff up.
So then I was umming and ahhing about that. And what happened then was, in my umming and ahhing, I'm like, oh, it'd be good, but it wouldn't be good. And the guy that owns that land, he's in France, so we were messaging back and forth. And then I was just talking to one of the local guys, and I mentioned to him, and his English wasn't that good, but, you know, like I was walking the streets and I'm friendly to people. And then I said to him, I'm looking at that land. And he just said to me, oh, come with me. And then he showed me another piece of land that was 50% bigger and better, because then the outward facing is onto just bushland. And so I said to him, oh, yeah, maybe I might be interested. But his English wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So we had another guy come in, and all of a sudden, like I said to him, we hadn't talked about price or anything, and so he then told me the price. And so the land that I was considering buying was half the size and double the price. So the land they're offering me is actually a quarter of the cost per square metre.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm considering one, and now I'm like, hell yes, I'm buying this land.
Yes.
Because on this land I can build 4 villas. It's just insane.
That's amazing.
But the whole thing, the underlying of that is that for quite a while I've been manifesting that one day I would like to have a space in Bali where I could run retreats. Not necessarily that I owned it, but I wanted somewhere that I could regularly, like it could be sort of a home away from home, and run retreats. So that's, watch this space. Within a couple of years' time, there'll be Breathwork Meditations. Come to Bali and just stay in one of the villas, and
that's amazing.
Run some different bits of magic, get different facilitators. Like, I love it when there's different facilitators doing different things. And just for people.
Yeah, and I feel like that just speaks to what I see in a lot of parts of today's conversation as well, of how you, as a leader, have empowered so many other people to, like, bring their gifts into the world as well, and that win-win of aligning with that.
Yeah, because I think that's the business person in me.
Yeah.
Because the business person in me knows that if everybody around me is like being successful, you're just going to be successful.
Yeah.
Like, I find it very interesting sometimes in some areas of, even in the conscious community, where people are like, you know, there's this disharmony, or this like, oh, this is better than that, that's better than this, and it's like nothing is better than anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, people say, oh, what's the best breathwork modality? The one that suits you best. That's the best one because it's the best for you.
Totally, yeah.
But try them all out because you don't know unless you try different things.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have somebody that, you know, they've been doing, you know, and I love my shamanic breathwork crew. Like I love them, but they're so like shamanic breathwork is the one.
Yeah.
You know,
like any community, there's always people that are very evangelical about it. And very,
this is why would you want to do that one when you've got the best already? And it's like, well, have you done the others? No, I don't need to. I've got the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
I think we throw our net wide. You know, I'm a vegetarian, but if you throw your net wide, you're going to catch more fish.
Sure.
Unfortunately for the fish, but in life, if we throw our net wide, we're going to get more.
Yeah.
We're going to have more abundance. We're going to, and if you don't throw your net out at all, what are you going to get?
Yeah. I love it.
You're not going to get anything.
I love it. Frankie, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
So for people that want to check out Breathwork Meditations, it's available in the App Store.
App Store, yeah.
Yep, and I've personally been using it for a few months now and personally have found it. I'm going to do exactly what you just said about these other people in certain communities. I'm going to say this is the best app out there, at least for me.
Yeah.
And I've personally found it as a way that, like, I've actually been excited to go back and do the breathworks and the meditations. I found myself not having to set up, like, discipline around doing it because I've just wanted to do it. So for me, like, I definitely recommend people checking it out and seeing what happens.
Yep, appreciate that.
Yeah.
And can I give a plug to my favourite?
Yeah, please.
Meditation app.
Please.
So my favourite meditation app is a little meditation app called Plum Village.
Yeah.
And so this is by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
Like Plum Village is where his local temple was, and they've made this beautiful little app, and it's so genuine and genuinely Buddhist and genuinely, and I'm not religious to any, like I love all religions and accept everyone, but it's like his teachings and the way he brings his teachings in and the teachers that are on there, it's like it's so soft and gentle. If people are looking just for something really soft and gentle, that, you know, because even within breathwork meditations, like there's lots of sound for sleeping at night. There's one of the things I love most about breathwork meditations is the playlist function where, you know, and I've had a few people ringing me going, oh, why doesn't every meditation app have a playlist function? You know, because people can set up 8 hours of overnight programming to release stuff. Because I don't believe that we, you know, like when we're doing things at a conscious level, we're affecting the conscious level. Mm-hmm. When we're doing things at a subconscious level, we affect that. When we're doing things at an unconscious level, then we're affecting that. So we need to, for real change, we need to affect all three. There's no, you know, we can, you know, think, oh, I need to change this. But just thinking I need to change the way I eat, doesn't change the way you eat.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, you need to buy different food when you're at the supermarket. There's lots of things. Yeah,
powerful. So to close out today's chat, Frankie, is there any final message you want to give anyone listening today?
Just just be true to yourself. Yeah, I think that's like and feel into what is aligned for you or what's not aligned for you, and notice and accept that can change on any given day, any given week. Embrace everything, and at the same time be discerning about everything as well. Like, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Yin and yang.
Yin and yang.
Yin yang.
That's been such a powerful theme today. And thank you for embodying that. And thank you for being a big inspiration and for being such an important part of our community. And got so much love for you, brother. And looking forward to more conversations like this going forward.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Leaders with Heart today. We appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And if you found value in today's episode, we would appreciate it massively if you shared this with a friend or a colleague. This is something that can massively benefit their day. And I also appreciate it so much because in the early days of building a podcast, anything like liking, subscribing, giving it a 5-star review, it all supports me spreading this message and mission of leading with heart with as many people as possible. So much gratitude to you for being here. And if you want to connect, I also love hearing from you. You can find mine and the guests' social media details in the show notes below. Mine are pattymac.truth on Instagram and Leaders with Heart on LinkedIn. The website leaderswithheart.com.au is another place you can find me. But until next time, have a beautiful day and sending you so much love.